Have you ever been interested in creating a concept picture book for kids, or are you curious about what the process is? Today I'm going to share behind the scenes a little bit of my own story on how and why I created the book, A Busy Day in ABC Woods. I'm going to tell you just what I poured into this project, how long it took me. In fact, I'm going to do it a little bit interview style. I have here on these sticky notes some of my frequently asked questions about the creation of my concept book, A Busy Day in ABC Woods, and I'm going to answer them sort of like I'm interviewing myself. So grab a cup of tea, maybe put in your earbuds and take a walk with me, whatever it takes for you to just be able to sink in and enjoy this part of my story. Before I can get into the story behind the scenes of how I created this book, I want to first tell you a little bit about what the book is actually about and read to you one or two pages just so you can get the feel. This little book is perfect for ages 2 to 6. That's who I was aiming for. A Busy Day in ABC Woods is brightly illustrated by yours truly and has fast-paced, rhythmic sentences to capture and keep young attention spans. From marching ants munching on apples to lizards zooming by, each page bursts with playful animals on their ABC adventures. Watch as woodland creatures buzz, jump, and dance, all while discovering new letters. So let's just read a couple of pages. We'll start with O. Otters hopped on logs. Porcupines played. Quiet quails were quick. Raccoons rested. As you can see, I use short, fast-paced words that have alliteration that play on the letter with a critter that matches that letter. And you can see that the illustrations are in the shapes of the letters, but they also resemble trees and they have foliage. And throughout the book, you'll see that I have butterflies and mushrooms and flowers that all flow together so that the style and each page has a continuity, but that each animal itself, each little critter is unique for that letter on that page. And you can also notice that as far as the types of illustrations, and what I mean by that is whether double page spreads, single page spreads, spotlights, vignettes, you can notice that I used two types of illustrations through this particular book, which I only recommend if you're creating a concept book. In narrative picture books, I often recommend using all types of illustrations evenly balanced out through the book for pacing. But in this case, I use double page spreads in the beginning and end on the very last page. And all the rest of the pages are single page spreads representing the letter of the alphabet. So that's what this little book is all about, and it is geared, as I mentioned, for that ages 2 to 6, and really with attention challenges in mind, because I kept it so fast and paced that it should grab and keep attention and also be easy for the adult or caregiver who is reading the book to also be really involved and feel like it's a breezy, easy, fun book to read. So that's the quick overview of the book. Now, how did I create this book? Well, first I wrote all of the sentences, doing the best I could to choose a critter that I thought would belong with that letter on that particular page. But I do have to say, when it came for the final illustrations, I did end up changing and tweaking some of the writing. So for example, representing the letter S, I had originally had a snake. And it was my daughter, who is, at the time, she was 20 years old, said to me, "Mom, you can't use a snake. I want you to use snails." And I said, well, I actually think there's a lot of kids who would enjoy seeing a snake in a book. So I ended up moving the snake onto the letter V for viper, where, let's find it here. I have Vipers had a visit. And then I honored her wishes and I made cute little snails. This might be my favorite page for the letter S, where snails slipped on slime. Now I wrote the main words, and then as you can see, I played around with them a little to suit the illustrations. And let's see here, what's my next question? How did I create this book? I used Procreate on the iPad for the illustrative process. So I do specialize in analog, watercolor, pencil to paper, pen and ink, but for illustrating picture books, I use Procreate on the iPad for the ease of being able to take it anywhere in the world with me on my travels and having that digital art right at my fingertips. I'm able to manipulate the layers and change so much. And in a moment, I will tell you how I built the base layers first and then used those every single day to create the bases of the pages that I illustrated on. And I'll share that in an upcoming question. So the next question is, why did you create this book? Well, I have several whys, several reasons that I tackled this particular project. And I want to encourage you to always know and think about your why before you tackle a project, because you always hit a spot in the middle of a project where you wonder why you're doing it. So it's always exciting at the beginning. You're fresh, you have fresh creative juices. And even at the end, there's some excitement of being done and launching the project. But in the middle, it feels long and you kind of think, why am I doing this? It happens with everything I ever do, not just picture books. And so knowing my why is really key. And my why for this particular book was both on some professional level and personal level. On a personal level, as an illustrator, I wanted to challenge myself to keep a certain pace and have this book done within 1 year. And the reason being because the book previous to this had taken me 2 years, and I wanted to double my pace and speed this up. And so that is one of my goals as a creator, is to get faster at the picture book process without sacrificing quality. So it was one of my goals personally to do a concept book that kept me on pace, because it was fairly regular pace to be able to wake up and do 1 letter per day, or it ended up being about 3 per week that I was able to accomplish illustrating. And then on more of the, so that was like a personal challenge I had to myself. And on the professional level of marketing this book, I really wanted to have an ABC book because I do visit and talk to a lot of kindergarten aged children. And I just felt like an ABC book would really fit into my repertoire. I also have a children's YouTube channel that focuses on a lot of ABC and early learning, and I really wanted this book to be able to be featured on that channel in order to complement other projects that I was working on. So on a professional level, I really wanted to do a concept book and have that in my portfolio. And then there was this other aspect, as I've already mentioned, it's a very fast, rhythmic, paced reading, and I wanted to be able to grab attention spans and be able to keep the attention of children for a really fun, exciting book that didn't take too long to read, and also taught them something valuable, which is early reading skills. And so those were some of my motivations, and I had to come back to that many times through the middle of the project because I just got truthfully bored. And that happens to me as a creative person. I hit around the letter M and felt like, this is getting, like boring, and I have so much more to the alphabet left. And I had to remind myself why I was doing what I'm doing. And it's the reason why I created the resource you'll find in my links called the Why Guide. And the Why Guide helps picture book creators create our mission statement and understand our why before we start projects, but also as a whole, as a picture book creator, it helps us form our mission statement. So you might want to check that out. Alrighty, so how long did this book take you? I already mentioned that it took me a year. And so I do say to picture book creators all the time here on this channel that the process of picture book creation is a marathon, not a sprint. In order to do a quick sprint with your writing or illustration, you can write short, like yes, you can write short stories quickly and you can illustrate pictures or characters quickly, but to take on a picture book is a marathon. It's like looking at more of a long game. And then if you're doing more than one book, you're going to be, looking like, let's say you want to do this as a career or part of your career, an aspect of what you do as an artist, as an author, to complement the rest of your career, you're going to be looking at a long game. And so this book took me 1 year, but it has been my goal to get quicker, possibly to be able to, without sacrificing quality, to be able to create a book every quarter of the year would be my dream. And so a lot of even what I'm doing on this channel, as I'm sharing everything that I learn and I'm creating resources that you all can find in the links, these resources are really like tools that I need personally to help me achieve some of my goals. So I'm creating what I feel the world really needs. So how did you pace yourself? Well, I'll talk about the illustrative part of pacing myself because that is the portion of the book project that took the longest. And in order to understand it, you'll need to know sort of about layers in Procreate, which I'll create a whole other video when I start making illustration videos here on the channel. I'll create a whole other video about what are layers and how do they work. But essentially, I created the base layers of this entire book first. And what I mean by that is you'll see that there's a continuity behind the background where there's a sky and trees and grass and foliage on every page. And then there is the letter that looks like a tree on every page. So what I did was I created all the backgrounds and the letters first. And that took me a significant amount of hours. Let's just say that took me between 5 to 10 hours to create all of those backgrounds. And then my challenge to myself was that every day, which ended up being about 3 times a week, I would illustrate the animals that belong with that letter. So I would often do the sketches ahead of time, like maybe a batch of 5 sketches. And I would sketch out, like, let's use the newts as an example. I would do sort of a compositional sketch where I'd say, okay, I think a newt would look really good sitting on the lowercase n, and another one down here. And, I would just sort of sketch it out. And then in the mornings when I would have my coffee time, typically I'd spend about an hour illustrating the animals. And I did make it fun for myself where I had several friends that I would Snapchat or send pictures to of that illustration every morning to not only entertain them, but they sort of supported me and rallied me on as I was illustrating the book. And then with that kind of pacing of making sure I was accomplishing a certain amount per week, I was able to get all the illustrations done. And I have found that the finalizing of a book where we're formatting, I have other videos on the channel where I share how I format, but the formatting and getting ready to publish and launching does take a significant amount of time. So I probably spent about 3 months on that. And so that kind of gives you an overview of how I paced myself for this picture book. And my very last question, what are my biggest takeaways as an author and an illustrator? For this particular book, I think my biggest takeaways are that you can learn as you go, because I was learning as I went. To be honest, I didn't even know the word concept books was where this particular book fell. I learned that as I went. I realized one day as I was researching and even getting some material ready for this channel that ABCs fell into concept books. And then I dug into that and realized I love writing concept books and I love educational material. And I think my biggest takeaway in that is that we can be learning as we go. In the middle of projects, we can learn what we need and not be afraid to start because we feel underqualified or not ready. You don't have to wait until you're super ready to start. And that would be my biggest encouragement to you, is that if you have the desire to start, do it. Just start taking the steps, start learning as you go. So here on the channel, you can find other videos where I go more in depth, like into the ABCs of concept book creation. If you want to actually do a concept book, you may want to look for that video. And as well, you'll find all kinds of other helpful videos where I guide picture book creators through the entire process, writing, illustrating, and launching your picture book independently on Kindle Direct Publishing. So thank you for sticking with me this long, hearing my story, maybe getting some inspiration. If you've enjoyed this video, do all the things that YouTube loves. Subscribe, hit the bell so you never miss a video, and give it a thumbs up, share it with a friend. And until next time, picture book creators, happy creating.